welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 271st episode, our returning guest is Dan Grossman. You first heard Dan Grossman on episode 223 of the podcast. Dan Grossman edits the online blog indycorrespondent.org, where you can find links to his poetry collections, Mindfucking Roundabouts of Carmel, Indiana, and Softcore. His forthcoming collection is tentatively titled A Thing for Border Towns. Dan is a former Peace Corps volunteer in Niger from 1992 to 1994. He has taught English composition for Marian University and served as managing editor and arts editor for NUVO. His poetry is forthcoming in Indianapolis Review and poem Stellium. He has published journalism in the Tucson Sentinel, Mirror Indy, NUVO and Pattern. He lives in Carmel, Indiana with his family. And now, on to the show. Are you still in San Diego?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How long have you been out there?
I'm here because, most of the past year, actually, because I'm helping my dad take care of my mom, who, right now, she's in the hospital. So I'm helping him out.
Gotcha.
Basically. But I'm also working on some projects going down to the border, and I'm keeping doing some projects, working on some border-related journalism, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool. Yeah, but has the fires affected you at all where you're at, or?
No, there are some fires inland, but I don't think they're nearly the size of what LA has seen, say, in the Palisades. Nothing like that. So at least so far.
Gotcha.
But it's the same kind of landscape, same kind of difficult to manage terrain, where you've got hilly terrain. You've got houses interspersed with woodlands and brush, and if you take all the vegetation out, then you face the problem of mudslides. So really the problem is people continue to build in these areas. Mm-hmm. where you've got the Santa Ana winds coming in at hurricane force. There's not a whole lot you can do when that happens. So,
right.
But fortunately, most of San Diego has been spared from that so far.
Yeah, but one thing I guess that hasn't been spared from, I'm sure, is the border debate that is getting enacted now that our dear leader, President Trump, is back in office. What's the situation on the ground there near the border now that?
Well, I do keep in contact with a number of people. There are some immigration activists that I meet when I can get down there. So my parents live in La Jolla, which is just a little bit north of San Diego. It's still part of San Diego, but it's about 10 miles north of downtown on the coast. Mm-hmm. So when I get a chance, I go down to San Ysidro, which is the part of San Diego that's right on the border. And there's actually an open-air detention facility called Whiskey 8, where the American Friends Service Committee has an aid station where they give. So I'll set the scene. There's actually two fences, one primary fence and one secondary fence facing Tijuana, separating Tijuana, Mexico from San Diego County. And in between those two fences, which are 30 feet high, at least the secondary fence is 30 feet high, very high fences, you have migrants who gather who are trying to cross over, which is basically a fool's errand right now because under Trump and under Biden too, under for the past 6 months, most of them are just sent back if they cross through if they cross between ports of entry, which basically crossing illegally. So they gather between these fences, and American Friends Service Committee, if they're there, they have tables set up with phone rechargers, food, water for these migrants who some of them have traveled a long way and are very desperate.
Hmm.
And all that's there for them on the other side of the fence is some porta potties and a makeshift water tank. Um, and Patrol does come by every so often and pick these migrants up and take them off for further processing, arrest them basically. And earlier this year, uh, if these uh, migrants made an asylum claim, uh, what the Border Patrol might do is give them a notice to appear at a future court date, which might be 2 or 3 years down the line.
Hmm.
So that's the kind of thing that made Border Patrol and conservative activists so angry is basically the the ability of these migrants to make an asylum claim and to remain in the country. But in June, Biden tightened that up, so that didn't necessarily happen for the past 6 months.
Hmm.
Now under Trump, things will most likely get even worse for migrants who are attempting to cross between ports of entry. But that's the people that, when I go down to the border, I can see them on the other side of the fence between those two fences. And there's actually a border church that meets there every Sunday,
Hmm.
and a number of activists gather there, and I meet with them, and I've grown to know them and uh, write about them. And that's on my blog, indycorrespondent.org. And the last time I went down there was a couple days ago on Sunday, the 19th, and Radio Canada was actually there, and a reporter interviewed me and asked me about my fear for the border, uh, what 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 I thought might happen under Trump, and I said, well, I I don't think that the Border Patrol under Trump is going to cooperate with groups like American Friends Service Committee that is giving this aid to migrants on the other side of the fence. And this is happening all along the border, not just in San Diego. But under Biden, there was this tacit cooperation between Border Patrol or unspoken cooperation between Border Patrol and these aid groups. Border Patrol doesn't have the resources to give these aid groups, in a lot of cases, water and food. And, and some of these areas along the fence are very, very hot.
Hmm.
Um, but I think under Trump, and this is why I told Radio Canada, the reporter, is that this is going to be tightened up. And I have a feeling that uh, aid groups like Humane Borders, that's one of them, American Friends Service Committee, which I mentioned, all these groups are, I have a feeling that they're going to be harassed,
Hmm.
if not arrested, under Trump because they're hardcore and they're nasty. You just listen to people like Tom Homan, the border czar, and Stephen Miller, this what special counsel to the president or whatever. They just sound like they want to that they don't like migrants and they want them out and they'll do anything to kick them out and they don't care if they bust up families or do whatever. They just want them all out,
Right.
all what, 15 million undocumented in this country. I don't know the number, uh, if they follow through, they're just going to cause complete chaos, and
Mhm.
that's what they want. So
Of course. Well, I mean, forget illegally. They're trying to go after, I don't know how successful they're going to be, but they've already said they're going after birthright citizenship as well. So this isn't even strictly, you know what I mean, migrants at this point. So,
yeah, right, and that's also what I told the Radio Canada reporter is that one place that I actually visited, I wrote about on my blog was Springfield, Ohio. That was back in on Columbus Day, uh, 4 or 5 months ago, maybe. And I met all these Haitians who are under temporary protected status that Biden granted them,
mhm,
and they're trying to make their lives in in uh, uh, in Springfield working in factories, and they're allowed to work under temporary protected status. I talked to a restaurant owner who her her father had been killed and her restaurant burnt in in Haiti, so she came here and she opened her own restaurant, and now she faces possible deportation along with thousands of others in Springfield. Well, you probably heard about Springfield in the news, these false claims,
mhm,
uh, fanned like fire by Vice President, now Vice President Vance and President Trump himself about Haitians eating dogs and cats.
mhm.
And I'm sure at least Vance knew that these were lies, but it's suited them politically to make these absurd and noxious claims. So
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And then, you know, like if they are successful in getting those people out, I don't know who they expect to live and work in these dying Midwestern Rust Belt cities that are struggling with the, you know, after effects of globalization or whatever. Who else is going to like, you know what I mean, prop up these places that have been slowly losing population for the last however many years? Like, I don't know what they expect to have happen after that.
yeah, well, I mean, you have some clues looking at what happened the last time around. I mean, they weren't able to deport nearly as many people as they would have liked, but they did spread this atmosphere of fear and paranoia among the immigrant uh, community, and that was even in Indianapolis. I like these. Uh, there's like these dance groups where a lot of uh, Mexican uh, migrant populations or uh, Mexican style dancing, and there were these groups in Indianapolis where from 2016 on where you can find a lot of uh, people who are clearly uh, born in Mexico, but that's the kind of style of dancing that they like to. Uh, but around 2017, around 2018, those groups seemed to disappear in Indianapolis. Uh, People wouldn't show up anymore because they feared being arrested by ICE.
Right. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, on a separate topic, we connected on Blue Sky here. I was telling you you're the actually you still are the only person on there that I've talked to who's a real person that's not trying to like sell me crypto or has a webcam
Or
they want me to
uh,
subscribe to.
there's also a lot of like women who have OnlyFans accounts
Yeah, right, exactly.
who want to connect.
Right, they're just
And
desperate to connect. But yeah, how do you like Blue Sky? Because yeah, I completely quit Twitter yesterday. I mean, I'd have
yeah, I quit Twitter too. I found it very difficult. Um, it was almost painful on Twitter because I don't know about you, but I always got Alex Jones in my feed,
right.
and I don't think I even followed Alex
No,
Jones.
no.
Um, but he, but clearly the algorithm was promoting these very far right voices and bloggers, and I think that may have been a factor in the election outcome.
Oh,
Anyway,
really?
I do like I deleted my Twitter account too because I just didn't see the utility of it anymore. Or
Yeah.
I really like Blue Sky. I've been able to connect more. For my blog, I was able to connect with a Palestinian poet who's published 10 books and or Palestine I should say Palestinian American poet who publishes a, a, um, a lot on the situation in Gaza and such. But I was also able to, well, I published a couple poems that directly dealt with Gaza, but he also uh, publishes on wider topics as well. So I was able to publish 3 poems of his on my site, and that was a really good experience. And I connected with him through Blue Sky. Um, been able to uh, promote some of my writing on my blog, Indy Correspondent, and generally you get a really good mix of news and opinions from people. And I don't know how have you found it, Rob?
I found it okay. Yeah, it's still kind of hard to imagine something completely taking the place of Twitter, which is, I'm sure, what Musk was thinking when he bought it and exploded it. Um,
Yeah.
And so it's like I found a lot of people on there, and I have nearly as many followers now as I had on Twitter on Blue Sky already. And I noticed you're doing not that bad yourself either. You're over what you're 1.4 it says. So yeah, you're doing good
Yeah.
follow account wise, but I just don't know if there's ever going to be that one place like Twitter was, you know what I mean, that people just flock to. It seems like it's kind of all these random ones that are kind of being cobbled together to you know what I mean, take the place of. So, but were you ever on TikTok?
I was on TikTok for a while, but I deleted my account. I found I spent way too much time.
Mm-hmm.
And not that there weren't interesting things on TikTok. Like if you wanted to follow what's going on in Russia and Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you could go there. But you also found very strange right-wing accounts on TikTok as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, they're worth following to see what their point of view is. Um, and I'm not saying I don't want to follow right-wing accounts and know what their point of view is. I like to read arguments and journalism from all sides to know what the debates are. I think sometimes, like MSNBC, you get the commentators and such are in a bubble and they don't know what's going on outside their own bubble.
Mm.
So it, but it, some of the stuff I don't want to spend all my time following right wing accounts, say, or extreme right, or trying to figure out what Alex Jones is doing next. There's
Yeah.
other things I want to do with my time.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. It is good to check in with that kind of stuff because I whenever I like hear from somebody who has a strict right wing media diet, they're always like very concerned with things that I was not even aware of. And I'm sure the opposite would be true if showed a left wing person who only got their, what I mean, news from left wing sources to it's just like the problems are that they think are problems are just completely foreign to me. I'm not aware of I mean that's where going back to Springfield. I mean that's where the whole the migrants supposedly eating the pets or whatever. I mean that came from the right wing fever swamp, and it kind of like I was not aware of that until the good old JD Vance put it forward as something in the mainstream now. So but yeah, it's always kind of flabbergasting to encounter that. But
Yeah.
but
So so yeah, I've been building up my Blue Sky account, I guess, and uh, although and I don't think the algorithm suppresses, say, links like I don't know Facebook does. I think Facebook is pretty notorious for suppressing links to say if you're trying to have a news site and if you link your an article to it, you're not. I don't know how much reach you get.
mhm.
Um, have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get out of well, is there even an algorithm with Blue Sky? I'm not sure. Or is it just whoever posted last who you're following?
Yeah, actually, yeah,
I don't
I
know.
don't know that that would be worth finding out. I guess
Uh,
it's pretty easy to find out. We should make notes or take notes and
yeah, right.
see.
Yes, we really should. But yeah, no, I've been on Mastodon for a while too. I know for a fact that doesn't have an algorithm though, so it's really a crapshoot in terms of whether or not anyone is able to find.
Yeah, I found Mastodon too unwieldy, I guess, or
Hmm.
it's not as straightforward as Blue Sky.
No, not at all. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely aesthetically Blue Sky is more pleasing for sure. Um,
Yeah.
but
Then there's Threads. I mean, that's I get
are
some interesting.
are you
Do
on
you
Threads?
interact on Threads at all?
Mm-mm, no, I've never signed up because I don't want to connect my Instagram to it. Because then, if you ever delete your threads, you have to delete your Instagram too.
Oh,
So, and then it automatically imports everyone you're following on Instagram into threads. And it's like, I follow people on Instagram based on like a lot of people is just like there's woodworkers and people that do visual arts and skydiving and you know what I mean, things that are like interesting to look at, but I don't even necessarily know what their last meal was or what their political opinions are. Like it's not why I'm following them on Instagram. So
yeah. Well, actually, Instagram's a weird one for me because they're okay. So about a year and a half ago, I was able to drive along the border. I may have mentioned this to you from San Diego to Brownsville, Texas,
mm-hmm.
because I had a car to transport to Indianapolis. So I took long way along the border, and and I I found out about this podcast called The Green Line, which is the Border Patrol podcast,
Hmm.
uh, and it's pretty right wing,
Yeah, I
and the host is a guy named Art Del Cueto,
bet.
and he starts off his podcast. He's talking about stuff that just like talking like me and you are right now, like
Hmm.
talking about Menudo or talking about Metallica. Then he gets in, dives deep into these, what Biden was doing on the border and how he's letting all these quote unquote illegal aliens in. He uses that term a lot.
Hmm.
And 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 basically how under Biden, the Border Patrol uh, morale was rock bottom. And there's some truth to what he was saying. I mean, it's not the whole truth, but it was worth following his opinions.
Hmm.
So anyway, back to Instagram. He has an Instagram account, and I take issue with about just about everything he posts. And so I've been trolling Art Del Cueto on Instagram.
Well, good. I'm glad you're
And
using
because he
it.
doesn't get a lot of responses on Instagram, he's actually responded to me.
Oh, really?
So what is that? 6 degrees of separation?
Oh, wow.
I'm 1 degree separated from Trump because Art Del Cueto is, I think, a close associate of Trump.
Oh, wow.
Trump himself has been on the Green Line, although Art Del Cueto did not interview him.
Hmm.
But I thought that was kind of funny.
That's funny. Yeah.
So I actually wrote something about Art Del Cueto,
Cool.
a little poem.
Nice. But
Yeah.
yeah, you sent me your manuscript there. That's exciting. How far along is that, would you say?
Well, okay, so I'm preparing a manuscript called A Thing for Border Towns, uh, a memoir in poetry, uh, stories, and memoir, or something to that effect, where I'm basically I'm trying to combine uh, all the genres that I write in one volume and try to make it coherent, which I don't know if I'll succeed, but that's what I'm trying to do with this manuscript.
Hmm.
So, and I don't know. I've had some success with. I have a poem coming out uh, in what is it? Indianapolis Review from this uh, would-be collection that I'm trying to publish or get an agent for, which might be asking too much for a book of poems. But so and I have some other potential publications coming out as well. Um, if you'd like, I could read the title poem that gives you some
Yeah.
sense of
Well, I was going to ask if you wanted to read something. So yeah, go right ahead.
yeah, yeah. So this one's called A Thing for Border Towns. I didn't read this one last time around, did I?
I honestly don't remember which one you read, but go ahead anyway.
Okay,
It's been a while.
so I'll just read this one. Uh, this is A Thing for Border Towns. The lights of Juarez gleam from across the river as I drive into El Paso at dusk. I'm thinking of the stars that messed with Pancho Villa's head during the long nights of the Mexican Revolution. The Villistas were routed by U.S. troops in Juarez. Villa fled to the interior. The revolution's been trumped by the drug wars, but Juarez and El Paso still lay skin to skin despite the barriers between them. They hurl abuse at each other while coaxing each other towards climax. Tomorrow, I'll cross the Paso del Norte bridge, eat some tacos, and tour the art museum. Call this poem cultural appropriation if you like, but it's not a crime. I'm not driving to some narco ranch like Benicio del Toro with a magazine full of bullets destined for a kingpin and his family. I'm just a guy with a thing for border towns.
Nice. Yeah, I like that.
So, yeah, I think that poem began when uh, I interviewed a particular artist here, well, in Indianapolis, who she was having an exhibition at a particular museum in a town I visited on my trip uh, along the border. So I wanted to interview her, and this was in November 2023, and she she allowed me to interview her, but she seemed kind of wary. And a few days after the interview, she told me that she didn't want her interview, me to use her interview at all.
Hmm.
I don't, per our discussion, she didn't like the fact that I was on the border and I was interested in the border and that I was not Hispanic and
Hmm.
talking to people on the border because it wasn't my culture. And she asked what my culture was, and I was afraid kind of to tell her about my background because I, I'm my background is I'm Jewish American, but this was after October 7th, so I really
Hmm.
I knew about her political pro-Palestinian political views, and she was assuming that I was a Zionist.
Right.
I think I don't know, but I think that's where some of this came from.
Huh.
And I guess that's a valid question. You know, what are your motives for being interested in a particular culture or a particular thing? I, but my answer is that, well, this is this is an American issue. I'm not pretending I'm Hispanic. I'm not writing from the point of view of somebody who is Mexican. And the so that poem where I say call this poem cultural appropriation, but it's not a crime. I guess it's my answer to this this line of inquiry. I'm glad I had this encounter with this artist. It kind of improved my writing to kind of figure out what her point of view is and what my reasons for being on the border are. It gets complicated. Say if you're on the border and you interview Senegalese migrants like I have who just crossed and happened to be at a McDonald's, do you have to be Hispanic in order to interview these people?
Right.
Because it's just not just Spanish speaking or it's not just Hispanic people crossing the border. It's people from all over the world, Chinese. So say if a Chinese person uh, crosses the border, do you have to speak Mandarin in order to interview this person? I mean, it kind of gets ridiculous. As a journalist, you think this is kind of absurd
Right.
because journalists are always interviewing people from other cultures and trying to figure out who they are. I mean, it just wouldn't work if you say you needed to get a Senegalese journalist to interview a Senegalese person, but believe me, these kind of debates happen all the time in the arts. I
Mhm.
mean, some of the art. I guess I have a journalist perspective in the art world.
Well, I definitely want people to read your last book for sure, and we read a couple. You read a couple of things from that last time, but
Oh,
yeah,
Mindfucking Roundabouts of Carmel, Indiana.
indeed, yeah, that's a good one. And then yeah, well, let me know when the new collection is out for people once you get that sorted out, and I'll let people know about that as well.
Yeah, and to follow, if people want to follow what we're talking about, they can always come to my blog, indycorrespondent.org, and there's a link to that poetry collection as well.
Awesome.
So,
Well, of course,
yeah.
one thing I always ask before we go though is what music have you been listening to lately?
Oh, wow. That's um I've lately gotten into a lot of have you ever heard of Ravi Shankar?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the oh, what instrument does he play? The sitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been listening to a lot of that lately. His live at Monterey, the music festival at Monterey in 1967. It's just a wonderful introduction to his music and Indian sitar music in general. And also, I like the more classically oriented music of his daughter, Anushka
Hmm.
Shankar. So. So I've really gotten into both those lately.
Nice. Well, great. Well, hey, thanks for coming back here, and yeah, let me know whenever you have something new come out. I'll promote it on the many social media places that I am now experimenting.
All right. Well, thanks. It was nice talking to you, Rob.
Yeah, you too. Take care of yourself. I'll talk to you soon.
You too.
All right.